So welcome back to the fourth episode of If Anything, I'm Everything. I'm Keisha Chanel, and I can't believe that we're already on episode 4. I think this episode is going to be so special, and I say that because I have my very first guest. And so not only have I known this guest like my entire life, but he is very special to me. So like growing up, we always were like, we should have been siblings, right? Like, cause we're that close. And like our older sisters, like they should have been siblings because we didn't really want them at the time, like growing up, it was just kind of like, it would have been a perfect exchange. But we made it work, and, we have some of the realest conversations. And I feel like it's very important for people to understand, where men come from and hear that side of their story, about their perceptions and the real perceptions that they have of certain situations. So welcome to the show, Bo Smitty.
Hey, glad to be here.
So we hope our conversation today will open up dialogue all over the world. We're going to be talking about just fatherhood, what, his perception of being a man is, just kind of some of the stereotypes that we hear, and just kind of getting the real input on those things, because it's very important that we understand that men need peace, they need acceptance and emotional support, right? Like just like women do, they need those things too. So this, my loves, is Boy Meets World. So welcome back. We are going to talk about just some of the kind of stereotypes that we get, I think, when dealing with men and their responsibilities, like becoming a father or just being a man in general. And I think we sometimes expect so much out of men, or we just kind of run with what society has kind of told us, that we really don't give them the opportunity to really express themselves. We don't really take the time to check in on them, to hear them out, to embrace them, to emotionally support them. And I just kind of wanted to, get some information just from a male's standpoint. So I have some questions for Bo. And the first question, I want to kind of talk about just fatherhood, right? So like, what was it like finding out you were having a child?
So when I found out that I was having my daughter, let me just start by saying I only have one child. Mm-hmm. She's currently 5 years old. She definitely is the best thing that has ever happened to me, mm-hmm. In terms of relationships and stuff like that. But when I found out that her mother was pregnant with her, initially it was bittersweet. The bitter part is we were not in a relationship. So mm-hmm. to create something so wonderful and perfect and beautiful, and to have this experience that you would like to share with somebody that you're in love with and married to, mm-hmm. and really care for, stuff like that. That wasn't my situation. So that was the bitter part, that it wasn't happening the way that I wanted it to happen. Mm-hmm. Because I never wanted to be in a situation where I had a baby mom, so to speak, right? I always wanted to be in a situation where my kids could be raised in the same house with the mother and the father, because I was raised by a single mother. Mm-hmm. So I had always vowed to myself to be there for my children in the event that I had them. So initially it was kind of hard to kind of hear, just because of the dynamic. Mm-hmm. Simultaneously though, I was excited because I've never shied away from kids. I never planned to have kids. necessarily. But I never also didn't plan to have kids, if that makes sense. So like, I was cool with it either way.
Mm-hmm.
So I was excited to be able to have a child. But I knew some of those experiences that I would have wanted, I wasn't going to have the opportunity to have, just given the dynamic of the relationship between her mother.
So with, you know, the bitter part and the sweet part of it, was there ever any like denial? Like, did you kind of already know, okay, I'm accepting responsibility? Like, kind of tell me that, because I think that, like, you know, we just joked a little bit about, you know, the stereotype of when people find out, the first thing men say is like, this is not mine. It's, you know, I did X, Y, and Z, da, 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 da. And I just wonder, like, is that from a place of fear? Like, do men initially say that because they're maybe afraid of that challenge or afraid of what comes with that, or maybe just, you know, not being where they necessarily want to be? So, you know, the confidence level is down. Like, were there emotions that went with that where you were ever not too sure about it? And then, like, how did you overcome that? If so, and if not, you know, I guess if there was never any doubt, then there was never any doubt.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's fair. I think that's a good question, too, because there's doubt for sure, especially in a situation where you're not in a monogamous relationship with somebody, right? So, because I don't know what you do. When you're not with me, I don't know what you do. So some of that kind of unsurety comes from just like, I don't know what you're doing when you're not with me. So I'm assuming there's other people in the picture. So for me, it was more so being unsure as if I was the dad, you know. I've been in situations before my daughter where people was trying to put babies on me, and then it turns out that they weren't my children.
Right.
And that's tough because just the type of person I am, like, all right, you say you're pregnant, I'm going to believe you because I was there when I was kicking with you.
Right.
Now, a big thing with me, though, is I practice safe sex. So if somebody run up on me talking about, oh, I'm pregnant by you, I'm going to be like, probably no, because I stay strapped. Unless, you know, shit happens. So you never really can tell all the way. But for me, some of that unsurety was because of that dynamic. Now, where I was at career-wise, financially, like that, I was good. You know, I had been on my career for, I think at that time, maybe about 12 years. So maybe about 10 years. Mm-hmm. So knowing that I was going to, you know, stay doing what I do right now until I, you know, retired. So financially, I was good. I was also at a point to where I wasn't going through that, like what I call a struggle. You know, I'm situated in my life at this point. A lot of times when you see young parents, their kids kind of go through that struggle with them until they kind of get on their feet. Mm-hmm. So my daughter never had to experience that because by the time she was born, I'm in my 30s. So I'm 30, you might as well call it 34 when she's born. So I'm established financially, career-wise. Like, I got a house now. Mm-hmm. So, like, I was good. So I was never tripping on none of that part because I knew I could take care of her. But the thing that I needed proof on was if she was my child biologically.
Right. So you had said something that I thought was very important in regards to growing up in a single parent home, right? And I think our situation was similar, you know, at some point in our lives to where we were in that single parent home. But like you stated that you had always wanted to create an environment where your children had a mother and a father, you know, grew up in a household where there was marriage, you know, like all of those kind of things. So like, was that all, did you always feel like that, or did that come later on in life? Because honestly, like as us being kids, you know, like I don't ever remember any of us like being the type of people that were like, yeah, when we get older, we gonna have that white picket fence, that red door, that dog out. You know what I'm saying? Like we never really talked about life, you know? So did that come as you were like, around what age do you think you started feeling that way to where you knew what it was that you initially wanted?
So again, growing up in a single parent household, like my parents were married. My mom left my dad when I was like 4 or 5, so I never really got to see like that dynamic between my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Then my dad went to prison when I was 8, so like he wasn't around like that. So a few things that I kind of subconsciously did at a very young age is, one, when my mom left my dad, for whatever reason, at even 5 years old, I always thought that I was the man of the house. Nobody ever taught me that. Nobody ever told me that to my knowledge. But I always took on that role, like, just instinctively, like being the oldest boy. Like, all right, I'm the man of the house at 5.
Right.
So I was always thinking of ways to protect my family, even at a young age. The next step with time, I think around that time I was maybe about 10 or 11-ish, well, a little older. Let's say middle school. My brother had gotten into a fight at school one time. So he ended up getting in trouble with the police, having to do community service and stuff like that. So in that moment, I knew, I was like, me and my brother could take whatever route we choose. We could take the productive member society route, or we could take the street route. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're built for both.
Right.
So we could have did either way. So I didn't want to see him in trouble, but then it also dawned on me, like, our dad is in prison, doing 25 years at the time. So it was like, how stupid would I be to end up in prison, right? And my dad is sitting there. So that triggered kind of the other side of the coin, which was the parent side. It's like, okay, I want to be better than my dad because he let me down. And in some ways I had certain resentment for my mom at times because I'm like, you picked him to be our dad. Mm-hmm. So I used to kind of blame her in a way, even though it wasn't her fault that he did what he did. But I used to kind of blame her in a way. I don't think so. But I used to kind of blame her in a way just because of the decisions that he made, which was unfair to her. But getting back to what I was saying, it's like, so with the other side of the coin, I felt like it just went hand in hand. So I didn't like the way it felt to not have a dad around when I was learning to throw baseballs, when I was learning to shoot basketballs. And having a dad that was an athlete always missed having him there to teach me to do certain things.
Right.
So between that and then just like feeling like kids deserve good parents and parents in the home, like that's what kind of triggered me to be like, you know what? I'm going to always be a good dad. I'm going to always be there for my kids. There's nothing that could ever keep me from my child, regardless of how the mother acts. And the thing that I will say, though, since I've had my daughter, I do understand why men leave certain situations. We like to say, oh, dude, y'all just leaving, da.
Yeah.
But when somebody's making it hard or constantly putting hurdles in front of you and your child, if you're not built like that, I can see a man folding. Like, I'm tired of dealing with your mama.
Right.
So I'm just done. Right? Because I've been at points in my co-parenting, I'll call it a journey, my co-parenting journey or roller coaster where I wanted to quit too. Yeah. Because when things become difficult and somebody's making it hard for you to maintain your relationship with your child, especially when the child is younger, and you have to kind of go through the parent in order to communicate with your child or to see your child and stuff like that, that can be hard. And it can be very discouraging if that person is not supportive or if they don't have a certain level of respect for your relationship with your child. So I do understand why men could leave a situation. I obviously don't condone that, but I do understand how and why it can happen in certain situations. I just made the decision that that would never be me, regardless of how hard the situation would be.
So, you know, like, for me, with just listening to you say that is such an eye-opener because realistically, like thinking back on our childhood and the time that we did spend together, you really were the leader out of our group. You know what I'm saying? Like you were always that person that I know I look to be like, what's next? You know what I'm saying? Like who's going to lead us, you know, like who's going to take us to that next level. And I understand, but I'm super grateful, I guess, for you being a boy, right? And being able to grow up and figure these things out for yourself. Whereas some people don't have the capacity to even rationalize Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, my behaviors are, this is my situation, I don't want to deal with this, or this is my situation, I want better, and this is how I'm going to do better or get better, right? And then automatically assuming that I'm the man of the house role at 5 years old. Yeah, right. All we used to like to do is dance and sing. You know what I'm saying? Like, we, like, you know what I'm saying? But like, it just makes sense now. You know, like looking back, how you really did play that leadership role, especially out of all of us. Now, we ain't really getting into a lot of trouble, but we had some adventures, okay? And so, you know what I'm saying? So like, so just looking back, it's kind of like, okay, I can see you growing up right in front of me with really no guidance. Not to say that, you know what I'm saying, your mom absolutely did a really great job raising y'all. Me, when I was with y'all, you know? And so to see you turn out as a successful adult, you know, overcoming the obstacle of not having a father around, rationalizing, do I want this kind of life or do I want this other kind of life? You know, it's just many props and, you know, condone, like, it's just a big thing, right? Like, because I feel like too, and I feel like all of us were kind of like that, because we've all of us kids together kind of dealt with the same thing, and we all really came out on the up, you know what I'm saying? Like on the upside of things, right? Because I guarantee you, I probably could have been somewhere, everybody could have been somewhere else, right? And so I think that's very important. And I think that it says a lot about you and what you wanted for your daughter to work through things and to sometimes probably take, you know, abuse, which, you know, a lot of people don't think men are abused, but you are, you know what I'm saying? Like, to take abuse when all you want to do is be there and provide for your daughter. So
so I think, and not to get ahead of the conversation, but I think one thing that's important, and I think the narrative that we have to change when we look at parents, right, is a couple of things. Daddies are not optional. People say that all the time. I don't think that's true. I think that's bogus. I think that's some generic line that somebody came up with and everybody just says it for whatever reason, and I think it's totally false. I think to downplay the dad's role in a child's life to that extent is freaking crazy. Like, and another thing I would say is, like, the mom is not always the better parent, and the mom and the dad both have equal rights to the kids. We've created these narratives that the mom just gets the baby and the mom is the better parent and the dad can just up and leave, which he can. The moms can also do the same thing. But I think we need to switch that to, like, holding people accountable. Like, nah, you done gave me a baby, you gonna ride it out. Yeah. But we so quick to be like, you the daddy, you option.
But I think that goes to the easy way out of things, right? And to a man not necessarily being where he wants to be, and instead of owning up to that, right? Like you said, taking accountability for where he is and trying to make changes to correct whatever it is that needs to be correct to handle his responsibilities. It's almost kind of that I'm out the door and I'm gone. And we as women, like, I know for myself, right? Like, you know, even for my situation, my daughter, her father was in her life in the beginning. He used to watch her and do all those kind of things. And then all of a sudden it was kind of just like nothing. And I'm the type of person that I'm going to take care of, you know, my stuff regardless. Right. Like, and I had a support system that she was going to be taken care of regardless. And so I think on my end, I kind of regret not being a little bit more aggressive and a little bit, you know, like saying, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z and, you know, all these kind of things. But I think it's just the easy way out. Right. And then because it's the easy way out, then I, as a woman, can talk down on them, you know, because I didn't put any effort. And it just became that big cycle to where it's like, yeah, men can leave and just go and then women have to stay.
Yeah.
You know, like that kind of thing. And that's not true. And I agree with you 100%.
It's not true. And then, you know what, the other thing that you know, like you hear the term, like, it takes a village, right? To raise a child. So for me, being as big on family as I am, because I'm very family oriented, the village is the mom side of the family and the dad side of the family. So I'll use myself for an example. Like, with us, right? I've always kind of been like the crazy one, the loud one, the one that's always like doing the most, right? So not having that relationship with my dad's side, I never really got to see how they were. last year I went and hang out with my dad's side for Thanksgiving. And it turns out I'm just like them. The rowdiness, the loud talking, the cutting up, like the drinking and carrying on, that's them. Like with them, I'm just regular because everybody does it.
Just does it, yeah.
But like with us, we so chill on our side that, you know what I'm saying, it seems like I'm just always just doing the most because I was in that family group. But when I go to the other side of the family group, it's like I'm just fitting right in with everybody. You know what I'm saying? So like being able to fully understand who you are, I think you have to have that relationship on both sides. And one of the things that I feel like is super important for my daughter's life is just that, being able to have those relationships with my side of the family as well. Because what I don't want is for her to grow up, to get a little bit older, and go to visit, say, like my mom or my siblings, and she feels uncomfortable because they feel like strangers to her. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's fair to her or fair to, you know, my family either, because at the end of the day, you know, she's important to them too. They want to be able to have that relationship with her as well. So I feel like feeding that and being able to develop those bonds that are unbreakable is like super important. So if you're cutting off the dad, that your child is missing out on so much more than just the dad.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So since we've kind of established that, you know, you know, as a young boy kind of grew into a successful male, like, tell me what your perception of a man is.
So my perception of a man, or if I were to kind of define a man, is somebody who takes care of, one, his family, two, his responsibilities, which can be secondary to family, because yes, taking care of your family is one thing, but you do have other responsibilities outside of family. The self-accountability, I think, is huge. And I think for me, that with that mixed with integrity really is what makes a man. Like, without all the extra stuff that we hear on, you know, everywhere else. Mm-hmm. But somebody who stands on their principles, they're going to take care of their business. And when I say take care of their business, I mean just in its rarest form. Paying your bills on time. Being able to build or to provide a place to be able at some point to be able to bring a female in so you can cultivate a better life. So basically what that means is, as a man, if I'm going to have a woman, I need to be able to provide a place to live. Like, again, I'm speaking rarest form.
Right.
Provide a place to live. Now, together with the woman, what I'm able to do is cultivate that into something bigger and better, because that's what a woman comes in and she allows you to do as a man. She allows and helps you to be able to cultivate things so they're better, right? So just keeping it just kind of like basic and to the point, I think that's what men do, right? But we have all these society things that we like to throw in there. Like, oh, you got to be able to pay all my bills. I ain't going 50-50. You pay for the mortgage. I pay for the light bill. You know, that kind of thing. All right, that's cool. And everybody's situation is different. Mm-hmm. But I don't think when you're looking for a man, that's what it's about. We like to put it on the financial side. Especially when you're looking at having a mate or taking on a partner. We like to throw that out there like that. But in order to even be to the point to where you can have a good dude, he has to be somebody of principle, if nothing else.
Right. He
got to be able to respect his space, respect, you know, the things and the people around him. And again, I kind of learned that early. That's how I can, like, you know, go out and hang out and do all these different things without issues. Because I respect my space, I respect my surroundings, so I never have problems. And I think that's what men are able to do, and they're able to be able to stand up and meet confrontation head on in a respectful way so things don't have to escalate. Mm-hmm. Not to say you shine away or you scared, but you just know how to handle your business in a way like a man would do, very respectfully, be able to talk through some things and stuff like that without fussing and carrying on and creating more issues. And then, of course, being able to provide, you know, that is definitely part of it. To what extent, though? I mean, the way society is right now, women are just as successful. So I'm not saying go 50-50. I'm not saying 80-20, whatever. I mean, because that's on you and your situation. But you do have to be able to provide. if for nothing else, for the kids you out here making, you out here shooting the club up, but then you ain't taking care of no kids. You got to at least be able to provide for them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, for me, that's what a man.
So a couple like questions, I guess, off of that, right? So being a man, and I already kind of know the answer to this question, even though I was going to ask you, is this the man you just described? This is you, right? Like, this is you describing what you've grown to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
So did it take, like, when did you actually realize that this was the type of man that you wanted to be? Like, was it prior to you having your child? Did she kind of help you grow up? Like, how did you figure out that that's the kind of person that you wanted to be? Because I can only imagine, like, a young male, no children, you're 34, no children, and you got a good job, paying your bills, your own house. Like, I can only imagine the lifestyle, right? And not to say that it was all bad or wild or anything like that, but, I mean, that's kind of rare, right? You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of rare. And then, like, I feel like sometimes when you have these younger men that have money, that are, independent like that, I feel like sometimes it's kind of like, well, I'm just kind of out here doing whatever, woo, going from day to day and not really figuring out what it is that they're wanting or what kind of male they need to be, right? Like, mm-hmm. How did you come to understand who you wanted to be, and then how did you start practicing it?
Okay, so for me, some of that was, I've always kind of had, like, my big picture, right? So, like, early in my career, I had, like, what I wanted kind of at the end of my career. Mm-hmm. I'll just end it at the end of my career. I always knew what I wanted and where I wanted to be at the end of my career and, like, what my professional goals were. So, initially in my professional career, I spent a lot of time striving for those things. And I think, like, anytime you're in a profession or, you're very career-driven, the reason you're able to stay successful is because you have these professional goals inside of, like, your career, right? Mm-hmm. So I was able to do that professionally. So that kept me on track to, like, kind of start to grow. But with time, I started to evolve because, like you said, I'm young, I got money, I got a house, nice cars, all these things. So that's very appealing to people. So mm-hmm. people would love to just come in and just, rearrange my living room because they think it's a nice house, etc. But as I evolved as a person and just through different experiences, because I didn't always necessarily know the type of man I wanted to be, but I've always been very big on principles. Mm-hmm. So having my own set of principles and my own set of values mixed with just my self-evolution and just growing up and maturing, that helped me to kind of get to where I am today. Now, where my daughter plays into that, I think there's a misconception that when you have kids, you're supposed to change or they change you. Mm-hmm. Or you hear that a lot for men. And they say, especially when you have girls, you got a girl, so that means you're going to, like, not be a player no more kind of thing. Or, whatever it is, right? It's not the way that works. At least in my situation. The way that worked for me was I was able to feel something for her that I never felt before. Mm-hmm. I was able to feel emotions that I never felt before. It didn't necessarily change my outlook on the world because that didn't change because of her. But just the things I was able to feel after she was born is what changed. But it was more so towards her. Mm-hmm. Now, that her being born did change me in a way because it did help me to understand, like, okay, I have to be able to see things through. I have to be able to show her that you can be as successful as you want and be the person that you want to become through hard work and just being dedicated and loyal to, whatever it is that requires that type of energy. But ultimately, the person I am today is just through self-evolution, being able to adapt to just my own changes and the way like I was impacted through my relationships and like kind of daily relationships and stuff like that.
Okay. So if I could set the perfect woman, and I guess I hate to say it like this, but the perfect woman down right in front of you, what is it that you would say, and you can answer this from your standpoint or how you feel like men, I know you have friends, y'all talk, I know those kind of things, but what is it that a man is looking for and needs from a woman? And I mean like not just maybe somebody that you're casually dating, but like a real relationship that could turn into marriage.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is one of those things I think is really simple. I think it's a little bit less complicated than people think. Mm-hmm. And the reason I think that is because you just have to know what you require from your person, right? So like once you understand what that means, like I know what it takes for me to be happy with somebody. Like for example, I require attention. If you want to keep me, I need your attention. So I think once you can break down what your list is of like what you require to be happy in a relationship or a situation, I think that's when you can figure it out. And don't try to do what the world says. Like, for example, like gender roles or like the man got to pay the mortgage and the lights and all you got to do is pay the water bill, right? Like, again, females are successful now. I mean, females that make more money as me, just as much money as me and stuff like that. So sometimes that changes because, yes, as a man, I'm supposed to be able to, like, provide things. Yeah, and that's cool. But if I'm doing all that, let's say we live in a house together, right? And let's say I'm paying the mortgage, the lights, cars, all this. And we make the same money. What is you doing with your money? And this happened to me too. So I'm paying for everything. So then when we decide we're not going to be together no more, you want to take half everything that you didn't help buy or build. So now I done lost half everything. You won't have the money that you didn't help bring in. And oh, by the way, you was able to sit back and stack your bread for the last 5 years while I was paying for everything. So now I'm down here looking bad and you out here chilling, buying a new house and shit. And I'm over here struggling now. Like, now you want to pay the goddamn mortgage. You see what I'm saying? Like, you don't have no problem with the mortgage now, do you pay that? So it's like, I think you just got to find that right balance. But you have to understand you and like what you require to be happy with someone. And again, that may change, but you have to be able to communicate that. Like, as you evolve and as you guys are evolving together or separately, you just need to be able to communicate that. So I don't think it's as cut and dry as just like making a list of like, oh, she got to be fine, she got to be, whatever. Yeah. I just think you got to understand what it takes for you to be happy with somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that is a really big part of it. Communication is so important because I talk about expectations all the time, right? Like, I mean, if you don't tell me what you expect from me, I may be missing the mark, right? Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, that can kind of lead to disappointment, and then it leads to just frustration. It leads to a lot of things when you can learn to communicate and hopefully have somebody that's open to communication, right? To understand that when I tell you what I need, it's not to diminish what you're already giving me or to, take away from everything that we already have. It's just me telling you the type of person that I am. And I always say this, like 100%, I feel like my future husband 100% has to understand me, right? Like I'm not complicated. I'm not a nagger. Like I'm not, I'm very go with the flow. I'm very attentive. I'm very submissive in a relationship, but he's got to be a leader 100%, right? I feel like he has to be very confident in who he is, his abilities to lead. And then I'll follow. But that doesn't mean that like behind closed doors, when it's time to make decisions on our family's livelihood, that we are not here. You know what I'm saying? And that my input is, just as important as his, even though I may say, okay, that's fine. And then he becomes the face of every decision that we make, right? Like I need him to be just that type of person. And I feel like it definitely goes from relationship to relationship, right? It's not cookie cutter at all. It is very different, right? And so I think communication, though, is one thing that is universal, right? Regardless of whatever relationship you're in, communication is absolute. And it just is, it just is that thing that you have to have. And so like, like I'm having these conversations with people and I'm hearing a lot of I need my woman to be feminine and I need her to be X, Y, and Z, right? But I feel like males fail to create that environment, right? Like, because for me to be like a feminine woman and to trust you 100%, you have to show me through action that you can 100% lead, right? Like, I feel like you want me to do all of these things. However, there's just chaos around you, like you got maybe women knocking on my door, or you got, legal issues, or, like you have issues with, baby's mamas or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not creating a peaceful environment for me to be what I need to be for you. So then in turn, it's not really working and we can't really get to where we need to be. And, like I always ask y'all, like I'll be asking all my male friends, all of y'all, like, what is wrong with me? Like, what is it? Like, I even asked my son's father. We had a really good conversation and he was like, I don't think there's anything wrong with you. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. Like you're just now, like, for the first time we're having a real conversation and you're just now saying, there's nothing wrong with you. We're agreeing that maybe the way you grew up had a lot to do with what we had, but I also took accountability for the things that I didn't do. Right. But he was just like, you're a pretty girl. So like, I don't know why you don't have anybody. He was like, but at the same time, yeah, you're feminine, but I don't know no other women that would just mount a 60-inch TV or, like go to Home Depot and get a drill and a stud finder. Like, I just don't, like, I don't know anybody like you and da. But I'm just like, it's just hard to find that person. And it's kind of like, I think once our men are okay with being who they are and like really understanding that they are accepted the way they are so that they can start making changes to be who they need to be, I think we'll be okay. And more women can find that peace that they're looking for to be able to provide the peace to the man, that they're with.
Right. So some of those insecurities, I mean, I know people and I've seen stuff like that too, but some of that is insecurity. So like dudes lacking the confidence, right? Because, for example, if I came home and you mounted a 60-inch TV, I'm like, oh shit, you did that. Like, I'm hyped. It's like, how did you know how to do that this whole time? Like, why didn't you help me with the other one though?
Right.
Like,
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So like, I'm not insecure about stuff like that. Even like financially, if a woman makes more money than me, please make more bread than me. Please. Because all you did, you just helped our situation too. Exactly. So like, why would I care? You see what I'm saying? But people get stuck on stuff like that. And I think it is a certain level of insecurity. But it's like, please do good. Please do your absolute best. Because I'm going to do my absolute best too. Because now you done push me. Because like really low key, like you can have that friendly competition in some situations where it's like, all right, when you put up a 60-inch TV, I'm about to put up the 65-inch TV.
Okay, the motivation to want to, to just encourage you to reach new limits, reach new heights. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to be my biggest fan. But if I had to say one thing about what I think a relationship should look like, because I believe like it's a partnership or like you're a team, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a movie that I like to reference for this example. You ever seen the movie 300? Mm-hmm. So in 300, there's a part where the main character has the messenger come into his city and he's holding up a chain with different skulls on it. And he's basically telling him, like, if y'all not gonna fold, we gonna basically kill y'all, turn y'all women into slaves, rape them, et cetera, right? So he's saying this, but he's standing in front of this big hole in the ground. It's huge, right? And there's no end to the hole. So as the dude with the skulls is popping off, the main character, he let him talking shit or whatever. But then he looks back at his old lady.
And she give him the main character.
He looks back at his wife. She looks at him. She gave him that nod. And when she nodded, he kicked his ass into that goddamn hole. Okay. Now, I think that is like the perfect depiction of like the teamwork dynamic that I feel like men think they be trying to get. They just don't understand how to get there. because she's already knowing if you kick him in his hole, that means you about to go to war.
Right.
You about to be gone. And there's some stuff that's going to come from you kicking him down his hole.
But it's that communication to know, like, this is what we on. Once you do it, we own it together.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And this is where we at. So when she gave him that nod, he already knew, like, all right, she cool. She know tomorrow in the gang we rolling out because we got to handle business now because I done kicked him in his hole, but you was cool with it. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's what society, when we saying submissiveness and that, I think that's really kind of really the vibe because women really, if you look at,
are in control of everything. We are really in control of everything.
They do, because you're going to control, like, they influence, they do. Like, if you got a good woman, she's going to influence you in so many ways. Like, and if she's a good woman, obviously the good ways. But when those hard decisions have to be made, like kicking somebody in a hole, she is going to make the sound decision. You may already know what you want to do, but she is going to confirm that decision for you. So that head nod in that scenario was like the confirmation, like, I understand all this, but make the decision that you feel like you got to make, and I'm rocking.
Right.
And I think that's really kind of like, if you ain't never seen 300, go check it out because you'll see what I'm talking about. And I think that's what we're all trying to be at that point.
Yeah, so as soon as you said that, I wanted to interrupt you and be like, this is Sparta, because, exactly. That's exactly where my mind, went to that damn hole. But, I just think that is very on point. And I think that is, it just, I think, takes us really taking a step back and changing our mindset on a lot of things and not being so caught up in society and what we're seeing and like how we've essentially been programmed to think things are supposed to be, right? Like we got to get back to our grandparents in these relationships and sit down and talk to them and figure out, figure out how they stayed together so long and how they made these connections, and were able to do what they needed to do for their families. Like, it's just so much, I think, that we need to kind of step back and take a look at, just because it's almost to the point where like all of these stereotypes kind of keep us divided and keep us so unsuccessful, right? Like, 100%. I mean, it's a crazy thing.
And then a lot of it, like we created in our minds. And the reason I say that is because, like I said, growing up in a single parent household, like nobody ever taught me, at least directly, like gender roles. But I grew up to be a young man believing in gender roles. Mm-hmm. But my mom never told me women only cook and men only take out the trash and wash the cars. She never told me that. She taught me to cook. She taught me to clean. Mm-hmm. She told me, at some point you need to be able to take care of yourself, that kind of thing. But I was never taught like traditional gender roles. So I think a lot of times, like, especially when we out here not being shown the example of healthy relationships, we just create what we think is right in our minds. And it could be just, those ideas are formulated by society or the people around us or whatever, but none of it's ever validated or ever, you never get to see the credibility of it through like an actual relationship because we just all kind of like trying to wing it. And then we listening to Beyonce and to whoever tell us that we got to be super independent. Right. We don't need nobody, this and that. So then you just further confuse it. And then when women become successful in their careers, now they feel like you got to be this certain caliber dude and I'm not going to submit and all this, and all these other things. But it's like, when you really look at it, it ain't about none of that.
Right.
Right. But we have all these like weird perceptions of what we should be instead of just doing what works for you, for y'all.
Right. For the two of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you for coming on the show. I feel like we had a great conversation, right? I feel like, again, we just have to step back and really start to look at the person we want to be. Like, start with acceptance, right? Like, we are where we're at. You can either be fine with it or you can want to make a change. But I think that, that accountability and acknowledging who you are is going to help you start that process of becoming the person that you really want to be, right? Becoming the man that you want to be and finding the people that you want to be around to kind of create that life. And, again, listening to you kind of find your own way into being a man. That's not easy for a lot of people, it's not easy for majority of people. So, you know, I hope that, you know, people are able to take away or just open up the conversation, right? Like to, you know, how can I be a better parent or be a better co-parent, or just understand that, you know, like you said, that both parents have rights. And, you know, hopefully we can get to a place where if we have to co-parent, we do it in a healthy manner, right? I think I've never really had an issue with that. However, it's because I've always been very positive about it. Like, I don't badmouth my children's fathers. I don't do it, you know, like, I feel like if there's anything that they need to find out about them, they will as they get older, right? Like in their relationships or in their relationships that don't even exist. So, I mean, they'll figure that part out, right? Like, I don't have to sit here and talk bad about the other to make myself feel better or to make, you know, a certain light be shed on me. Regardless, they're going to be loved 100%. And I just feel like we need to start really thinking about the bigger picture, you know? So.
Yeah. And that's deep. And a lot of that stuff, and some of it is going to be, you know, it's going to take time and just breaking some old cycles and, you know, what we call like generational curses and stuff like that. But just being able to, you know, be better than the last wave of, you know, of people and family members and stuff like that. And I think as we progress, just as a society, like we get smarter every time, and we start to do things a little bit differently every time. And I think in a Black community that parenting and getting back to that traditional household and, you know, the activity of the father and the life of the children and stuff like that, I do think it's starting to improve. And I think that's huge. And I hope it, you know, doesn't take as long as it's looking like it might take, because this whole debate about who paying for what and all that craziness, I mean, we got to be able to get over that little hurdle first. It's like a 2-foot wall. Everybody just step over it and then just stay on the right side of it and just understand it's not always about that. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, submitting if that's where you at. And there's nothing wrong with the man making less money if that's where you at. So we can just move past the little petty stuff like that. Just, you know, as a whole, I think we'll just be so much better off.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you all for listening to the episode today. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure that you share it. Make sure that you follow on whatever platform you get your podcast from. You can find me on Instagram as Keisha Chanel. You can also join and subscribe on my Patreon. The link is in the show notes. I'll also link Bo's information just in case you kind of want to step into his world. Follow him on social media. His information will also be in the show notes. That's it for today. Until next time.